Oh yeah, time for a new Marcus video. Hopefully this time I won't have to sit through a damn Patreon ad. At Patreon, you can support creators you like by giving them money. $2 gives you access to creator commentaries and anything else that might be behind a paywall. $5 gives you all that, plus you get early access to feature videos. Alright, ad's over. You can watch the video now. Oh, almost forgot. There's just one more quick
warning. The following video contains footage of real-life violence.
If the day is Saturday, the season is summer, and the sky is clear, there's all sorts of things you might want to do. And if you're a resident of the state of Wisconsin situated within driving distance from the famous Apple River, it's more or less a rite of passage that on some such days, that thing will be tubing. The activity is about as far from complicated as can be. You get an inflatable tube, plonk it in the river, and sit on it while the current takes you downstream. Sometimes your tube may be tethered to others on which your friends are sitting, and more often than not, should you be so inclined, you will be drinking alcohol. It's just a good old-fashioned, unpretentious recipe for a pleasant summer's day. And so on July 30th of 2022, that's exactly what a host of Wisconsinites of all ages and walks of life found themselves doing. And it was all panning out exactly as it was supposed to. There was sun, there was laughter, and not much else besides. Until sometime not long past 4:30, as if out of nowhere, there was screaming. Soon the first 911 calls began coming through to St. Croix County Dispatch.
Hello, St. Croix County 911.
I don't know what happened. Yeah, but calm down. Stop it and calm down.
Somebody's got to talk to me.
We're at River's Edge.
Was somebody stabbed? Is that what you're calling about?
I don't know what happened. Somebody pulled a knife. We're on the river.
Do you know where the man with the knife is?
And I have the fucking knife.
And we are here, and somebody attacked one of our friends.
Can somebody tell me where the man with the knife is, please?
No one did know where the man with the knife was. Just Apple River, people stabbed was about as much as anyone could convey at that early stage. And when police arrived on scene, the full picture didn't immediately come into focus either. The stabbings checked out, unfortunately. Several people were injured to varying degrees of severity, and a 17-year-old named Isaac Sherman had incurred a 4-inch stab through his chest that penetrated his heart. He would die not long after arriving at Lakeview Hospital. The scene was certainly tragic, and apprehending the culprit no doubt urgent, but authorities continued to struggle to get it straight from anyone just what exactly had happened. Soon, however, they would have occasion to speak to a friend of Isaac's named Juwan Cockfield. Not only had he been there when his friend was fatally assaulted, he had a picture of the assailant on his phone. As a matter of fact, he had managed to capture the whole thing on video. Juwan readily handed his phone over to police so they could review the footage. This is what it showed.
What is he on? Whoa! 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 Away! Oh God! He up! He up! What are you talking about? What the hell are you talking about? What? Get away from us! What? What are you doing? What's going on with y'all homie? He's on camera. Guys, tripping. He's on 4K. Yo, the new iPhone got that good quality. What did you say? Yeah, what the hell? Who is this? Yes. For the culture! Who is that? For the culture! Who is that? Who the hell is this? kids. Go. Go. It doesn't matter. Go. He said he was looking for little girl. He said he was looking for little girl. You're looking for little girl? Yeah. That's exactly what he said. Weirded us out. I even have that part on camera. Did I? Some young ass kid. What the hell is this guy's problem, bro? We trying to have fun. He's gonna claim you. He's gonna claim you. We don't want this motherfucker. Let it on camera. Let it on camera. He on camera. Oh God. Oh God. He on camera. Oh God. He on camera. He hit a woman? He hit a woman? You hit a woman. He hit a woman. You killed him. What the fuck? What the fuck? What the fuck? He's dying. He's dying, bro. What? Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. Are we serious? Is this real? Oh my God. Who is that? Oh my God. Oh my God. Is this real? Is this real? Oh my God. Oh my God. What the fuck? Is this real? Wait. That's not bike! That's not bike! That's not bike! That's not bike! That's not Isaac! Oh my God! Oh my God! This isn't real! This isn't real!
So, hopefully that cleared everything up for you. If not, then that's forgivable. A lot of things happened. We just thought it was important to play from beginning to end without interruption once so you can get the lay of the land before we start breaking things down. So let's go through it once more in hopefully not too excruciating detail, just so you know the basic who's and whats.
What is he on? Whoa! Whoa! Whoa!
This is 52-year-old Nicolae Miu. From now on he'll be referred to as Nick. Born in Romania, but a US citizen since his teens, Nick is the defendant in today's case. He has just run up to the tubes of Juwan Cockfield and Juwan's friends, all teenagers. Nick was snorkeling around the area, searching for a phone that a member of his group lost. He claims the reason he ran up to the teens at this moment was because he believed he had spotted one of them holding what may have been that phone. It wasn't.
Oh God! We up! What are you talking about? What the hell are you talking about? What? Get away from us! What? What are you doing? What's going on with y'all homie? He's on camera. Guys, tripping. He's on 4K. Yo, the new iPhone got that good quality. What did you say?
The teen in the purple trunks is Isaac Sherman, and while he's out at the front of his group at the moment, you won't actually see much of him once the confrontation escalates. He winds up standing off to the side for the most part.
Yeah, what the hell? Who is this? Yeah!
The reason the teens are now cheering is because they can see a group of adults approaching the scene. They'll come to be referred to as the Carlson group, given they were tubing that day to mark the birthday of a man named Quentin Carlson, who won't actually wind up being a party to the confrontation himself.
Yes! For the culture! For the culture! Who is that?
That is Madison Cohen. Right now, she's gesturing at Nick to leave the area. Madison, in a rather interesting way, is going to wind up being one of the most important individuals in this entire interaction, though we'll be getting into how all that works a bit later on.
Look at the culture. Who is that? Who the hell is this?
Go. It doesn't matter.
He said he was looking for little girls. He said he was looking for little girls.
He said he was looking for little girls, a key contention in this case. According to Juwan, before he began filming, he and his friends had seen Nick looking around in the water by himself, and thinking he looked strange, asked him what he was doing, to which he replied he was looking for little girls, or words to that effect. Nick will steadfastly deny ever making any such comment. One thing everyone agrees on now is that Nick was not in fact looking for little girls. There were none in the area to look for.
You're looking for little girls? Yeah! That's exactly what he said. We're on us out. I even have that part on camera, did I?
He doesn't. Juwan did capture a much shorter video of Nick before this one though. Here's what that 9 seconds of footage showed.
Grown man trying to have sex with little girls. What the hell? What the fuck? He's a raper. Whoa.
So as you can see, it captures Juwan making the accusation, but not Nick making the comment. Back to the main video.
Yes, kid. What the hell is this guy's problem, bro? We're trying to have fun.
In this section, you can see a 20-year-old man named Dante Carlson is now close to the confrontation. And in the background, more members of the Carlson group are approaching. It will be pretty much universally attested to at trial that the teens could discern the Carlson group were siding with them, and that their presence gave them even more strength in numbers. And so it's around this time that the volume and taunting of Nick takes a big ramp up. Here you should be able to see that Nick is holding a knife. It's a fold-out utility knife he usually keeps on hand for odd jobs that might pop up, presumably never imagining he'd be using it for the purpose he's about to. Now you can see a hand reach out and give Nick what looks to be a light push on the shoulder. That's 23-year-old Riley Mattison, another member of the Carlson group. The man in the yellow trunks is 22-year-old AJ Martin, also of the Carlson group. He'll become important for reasons you may have picked up on during the first playthrough. This 1.5 odd second stretch is one of the most crucial moments in the entire confrontation, because it is somewhere in here that Madison claims Nick punched her in the face. Several from the teen and Carlson groups will attest to witnessing it, though recollections will vary between punch and slap, so we'll just go with struck moving forward. Nick denies ever striking Madison. Unfortunately, Juwan was not pointing his phone in their direction at the time of the alleged strike, so it will largely become a matter of Nick's word versus that of his accusers. Juwan's video will however capture Dante knocking Nick down into the water, which Dante claims was in retaliation to Nick striking Madison. The follow-up slap was again from Dante. The man pushing Nick down from the back is AJ, just in case the yellow trunks didn't make it obvious. Over the course of the previous 10 seconds, Nick stabbed 4 people. First was AJ Martin. The blade went in at about the same time he was in the middle of giving a push to Nick, and the movement caused by this may have exacerbated the severity of his wound considerably. He was essentially gutted, though somewhat miraculously will survive and make what looked to be close enough to a full recovery. Somewhere in these few seconds, Nick winds up stabbing Riley Mattison, the fallout from which is captured here just a moment before he stabs 22-year-old Tony Carlson, older brother of Dante. Tony had been staying out of the heat of the confrontation until this point, but gave Nick a bit of a push on the back right before Nick turned around and inflicted the stab. Mercifully, his injury will be relatively minor, resulting in not so much as an overnight hospital stay. And at about here, he stabs Isaac Sherman, while Isaac appears to be grabbing him by the neck. Prosecutors will theorize Isaac went to subdue Nick in response to the stabbings he witnessed. Isaac will be the only one to die from his injury. The man wearing sunglasses is Ariel Charguez, a member of Nick's group who came over, he says, because he witnessed Nick being attacked. He doesn't factor into the confrontation itself and says he actually had no idea how close he was to the center of things during the stabbings. His presence is significant, however, in the sense that Nick is now not without a friend. But the stabbings aren't done yet. There's one more to go, and that's Dante Carlson. Dante's stabbing is frustratingly difficult to pinpoint as it's not caught on Juwan's recording, but we do have some markers that tell us what window it must have happened in. It couldn't have happened before 2:08, as Nick is pictured knife in hand not stabbing anyone, and he was only out of frame for half a second between this point and when he was last seen standing next to Ariel. And it had to have been before 2:16, as Nick can be seen walking away on the right side of the frame, while Dante, difficult as he is to make out, can be seen in the distance with his father Quentin and other members of the Carlson group. Speaking of difficult to make out, Dante's stabbing actually was caught on tape, just not Juwan's. It was filmed by this guy, Larian Davis. Larian is not related to any of the key groups and just began filming the commotion shortly after Nick was first knocked to the ground as Larian was taking a selfie. Here's how that footage came out. That's it. Unfortunately, there was water damage to Larian's phone, and this was the best that could be recovered. But if you squint hard, you should be able to make out a thrusting movement between two blurry figures identifiable by body shape and swim trunk color. What you're seeing is Nick on the left stabbing Dante on the right in his lower abdomen.
What the fuck? What the fuck? What the fuck? He's dying! He's dying, bro! What? Oh my god! Oh my god! Oh my god! Oh my god! Are we serious? Is it real? Oh my god! Who is that? Oh my god! Oh my god! Is it real? Oh my god! Oh my god! What the fuck? Is this real? That's not bike! That's not bike! That's not bike! That's not bike! That's not Isaac! Oh my god! Oh my god! This isn't real! This isn't real!
But unfortunately it was of course all too real, and should serve as a cautionary lesson for why one should always avoid initiating conflicts with strangers. What's done is done, however, and what happened on the Apple River that afternoon, horrible as it may have been, created a very interesting case study in the parameters of a self-defense claim. After identifying and apprehending Nicolae Miu a little later that afternoon, early evening, and reviewing the contents of Juwan Cockfield's footage, the powers that be would come to decide he had no such claim for any of the 5 stabs he inflicted. And a little less than 2 years later, in April of 2024, Mr. Miu would get his chance to have his case put up against the state's. Before we start going through how some of that played out, it's important to get a bit of a grasp on what specifically is being charged, and how specifically the jury is being instructed to consider those charges, as well as Nick's claims of self-defense. The state of Wisconsin is bringing a bunch of charges against Nick, and they're pretty straightforward at the higher end. Count 1 is first-degree intentional homicide for the killing of Isaac Schumann. First-degree intentional homicide is exactly what it sounds like. You killed a person and you intended to kill them. Counts 2 to 5 are attempted first-degree intentional homicide for the stabbings of AJ Martin, Riley Madison, Tony Carlson, and Dante Carlson. Again, straightforward. Attempted first-degree intentional homicide is when you intended and attempted to kill a person but ultimately did not succeed. In Wisconsin, a conviction for first-degree intentional homicide results in a mandatory sentence of life imprisonment. A conviction for attempted first-degree intentional homicide can actually result in the same. They're both Class A felonies. If you're feeling a bit squeamish about the intentional aspect of all of this based on what you've seen so far, you're not quite off the hook yet, because the jury will be given the option to convict Nick on lesser charges if they feel like these ones are a bit rich, but they still don't think he should walk. For Isaac, they could bring it down to second-degree intentional homicide, which is very similar to first-degree but with a subtle difference. Second-degree would apply if he intended to kill Isaac, but he believed the force he used was necessary. However, that belief or the amount of force used was unreasonable. A conviction of second-degree intentional homicide can result in a sentence of up to 60 years imprisonment. Below that, they will have the option of first-degree reckless homicide. This one doesn't require the intent to kill part, but does require that Nick showed reckless disregard for human life and conduct that created risk of death of another human being, and that Nick was aware of this risk and the unreasonableness of his actions. A conviction of first-degree reckless homicide can also carry a sentence of up to 60 years imprisonment. But wait, there's more, because if they can't agree on that one, they can go down to second-degree reckless homicide. This would apply if Nick recklessly caused the death of Isaac, but did not show utter disregard for human life. Now, how one can recklessly cause death, but not show utter disregard for life, is a bit of an academic question. But hopefully when we start unpacking potential mitigating factors and their counterpoints, you'll get somewhat of a better idea of how one could square that in this situation. A conviction of second-degree reckless homicide can result in a sentence of up to 25 years in prison and/or a $100,000 fine. For the stabbings of the other four, the jury will also have the option of considering attempted second-degree homicide, as well as first-degree recklessly endangering safety, defined as someone who recklessly endangers another's safety under circumstances which show utter disregard for human life. A conviction of first-degree recklessly endangering safety can carry a sentence of up to 12 years and 6 months in prison and/or a fine of up to $25,000. And finally, second-degree recklessly endangering safety, which again would entail Nick acting in such a way that recklessly endangered the safety of any of the four, but without showing utter disregard for human life. It can carry a sentence of up to 10 years in prison and/or a fine of up to $12,000. So that's what the state's bringing to Nicolae Miu. What does Nick have to counter with? As you might have guessed, it all comes down to self-defense. In Wisconsin, a person may use force that they know to be deadly or potentially deadly, so long as that person reasonably believes that force is necessary to avoid death or great bodily harm to themselves or another. So while all those charges we went through can be a little confusing at times, if the jury were to find that Nick reasonably believed his force was necessary to those ends in the instance of each and every stab, things all of a sudden become very simple. Not reckless and therefore not guilty across the board. So how should the jury assess reasonableness? This is arguably where the defense has their biggest advantage. The jury is not to decide whether Nick's actions at any given moment were reasonable from the perspective of a third party, but rather from the perspective of Nick at that moment. Put another way, they should not assess how much danger he was in, but instead how much danger he may have felt he was in, reasonably, from his perspective. There are still caveats they're allowed to take into account, however. A big one is whether he provoked the attack. A person who engages in unlawful conduct likely to provoke an attack may not use deadly force against said attack. Now things get complicated again though, because if Nick did provoke an attack, once the attack has commenced, if he were to reasonably believe he was in imminent danger of death or great bodily harm, self-defense is back on the table again. It's not so much a contradiction in the law, as much as an acknowledgement that situations can evolve second to second, something this case is a textbook example of. So if the jury were to find Nick was the one most responsible for starting everything, he wouldn't necessarily be done for, but it would definitely hurt his chances. Which is why we waited until now to go through one last charge he's facing, that of battery for the alleged strike to Madison Cohen. Any act done with intent to cause bodily harm may qualify as battery in Wisconsin. It is a Class A misdemeanor, carrying a penalty of up to 9 months in prison and/or a $10,000 fine. Compared to the severity of the other charges, it would normally be a bit of an afterthought, but because it could be viewed as the catalyst for everything that happened after it, we wind up with a case wherein no one is disputing that Nick stabbed 5 people but everyone really wants to quibble over whether or not he struck one woman. Madison did testify and reasserted that the strike did happen, though her testimony was not filmed at her request, which is all above board under Wisconsin law. The other parties to the conflict were filmed on the stand though, and an awful lot was said on the matter. So in order to not get bogged down too much, we'll just focus on the two witnesses who were positioned closest to the alleged strike, Dante Carlson and Riley Madison. We'll also be spending considerably more time on the cross-examinations by the defense than the direct examinations by the prosecution. That's not to give preferential treatment to the defense, it's just that that's more where details got picked apart. Just like a juror, it'll be up to you to decide if the points Nick's attorneys are trying to make are compelling or not. We'll start off with a bit of direct though, so here's how Dante best remembers things.
I turned to the kids group and I went, "What's going on?" And they shouted, "He's looking for little girls." And then I went again to turn back and get his side of the story, and that's when he punched Madison in the face.
What do you remember next after that?
I punched him.
So did you punch him in response to him hitting Madison?
Yes.
So 2661, is that where you're hitting him in response?
Yes.
And so when you got there to try to figure out what's going on, did you hear Madison Cohen immediately say to Nicolae Miu, "Go, get your fucking ass, go," something along those lines?
Yes.
Fair to say Madison Cohen wasn't asking questions, agreed?
Agreed.
Fair to say Madison Cohen was giving orders, right?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yes.
And she gave it in a loud, strong voice, correct?
Yes.
Who the hell is this? Go!
Madison barking orders at Nick doesn't give him any license to strike her, of course, but the defense will constantly highlight the hostility of the environment whenever they can, because it will help them when they get to the stabbings. If Nick was given every reason to believe he couldn't negotiate with the people he had faced up until that point, that may help the jury see how, from his perspective, he could reasonably believe the force he used was necessary to protect himself from imminent death or great bodily harm.
You made some statements to the police, correct?
Yes.
And the statements that you made to the police were that same day in the hospital, agreed?
Agreed.
You were on the river with Riley Madison, correct?
Yes.
She's a friend of yours from high school?
Middle school.
So you've known Riley Madison for years and years, correct?
Yes.
And you were on the river with Madison Cohen, correct?
Yes.
Same thing, a friend that you'd known since middle school, correct?
Yeah.
You can distinguish between the two of them, right?
Sometimes.
And what you told the police, "I thought he had hit my friend Riley and I automatically reacted." That's what you told them?
Yes.
You used the name Riley, correct?
Yes.
Then you also said to them, "Me and Riley were standing right next to each other and he got up close to Riley and Riley pushed him away and he did a swift motion towards her," correct?
Yes.
And the her you're referring to that sentence is the only name that you used, which was Riley, correct?
Yes.
You told the police, "I don't know if Riley pushed him or something. I didn't see that. All I saw was him make a motion towards her, and I saw her fall down, so I reacted and hit him." You said those words?
Yes.
The officer asked you, "Can you describe Riley to me?" Do you remember that?
Yes.
And you said, "She is a brunette, skinny, has tattoos down her arm," correct?
Yes.
And that, fair to say, accurately describes Riley Madison, correct?
Yes.
You were proud of laying this man out in response to what you observed regarding the swift motion, correct?
No, I was proud of defending a woman.
Okay. And so I want to get into that, right? And so what you understand is you're defending a woman, correct?
Yes.
Which woman?
Madison.
Okay. And the woman that you say you're defending, she fell to the ground.
I believed at the time she did, yeah.
Okay. And you believed that because that was your memory?
Yes.
And you say that now, "I believed it at the time," because you know that the video shows she didn't fall down, correct?
Correct.
So what we know is your memory is wrong, at least in regards to that, correct?
Yes.
So there's times that your memory is wrong about what happened that day, correct?
I guess, yes.
Describe this punch.
It came from his left side. I would say it was a pretty fast, swift motion like that.
Okay. And what you've just shown us is you used your left arm to move forward in what I would describe a jabbing motion. Would that be fair?
I used my right arm.
You used your right arm. Okay. Did you see Nicolae Miu use his right hand?
Yes.
And do you know that in the video you can observe Mr. Miu standing in front of Riley and Madison with the knife in his right hand?
Yes.
So it's with the hand that's holding the knife that he punches her?
Yes.
So this grown man holding a knife as a hand reaches out and punches her in the eye where her sunglasses are, correct?
Her cheekbone, but yeah.
Okay. Right near her sunglasses, correct?
Yes.
You're aware that her sunglasses are in perfect condition?
Objection, assuming facts not in evidence.
Sustained.
This was a risky line of questioning for attorney Aaron Nelson to pursue, especially when he was doing so well, because the subject of Madison's sunglasses could be more helpful to the prosecution. The last time we get a clear shot of Madison's face before the alleged strike, she's wearing the sunglasses in question. Mere seconds later, after the alleged strike, the camera captures her without the sunglasses. Now maybe she removed them in order to better stare down Nick. But that would sort of take the sting out of Nelson's point of Nick implausibly striking her without damaging them. Regardless of their ultimate condition, if she didn't remove them, where did they go in that few seconds? Could they have been knocked off by some sort of external force? Maybe not the sort of question that Nick's attorneys should be inviting jurors to think about. For Riley Madison's part, she was very forthright about what she could and could not remember, with most things falling in the latter column.
I remember getting off the tube, walking up to Mr. Miu, and I just remember Maddie being there and yelling at him. I remember her being punched in the face, and then I remember being stabbed, and that is completely it.
With him punching her, do you remember any more details than that? Like what hand he used or how the punch was?
Not at all.
One of the first things that you told the police is you said, quote, I thought he slapped her because, like I said, it was just kind of not comprehending. You said that to the police, correct?
I don't remember, but if I did, yes.
Since then, you've said she was punched, correct?
That is correct.
And today when you were asked, tell us the details, you were like, no, not at all. I don't remember the details.
I don't.
And you've been very honest about that. We appreciate that. What I'm trying to make sure is that when you say you don't remember the details, like you don't have a picture in your head about Maddie getting punched, correct?
I shouldn't have said punched because I don't remember if it was a punch or a slap, but I do remember her being hit in the face.
Okay. You don't remember which hand it was?
I do not.
You don't remember the context under which it was, correct?
I do not.
You don't remember if it was in response to something that she had done, correct?
Correct.
And right now, as you say that, you don't have an image, a picture in your mind about what it is that happened, correct?
Correct.
Fair to say, and again, that what you're telling us is you kind of deduced that something happened to Maddie based upon all of the other circumstances, correct?
I know I saw Maddie get hit.
Okay. There were times that we've seen in the video where you're standing in front of Mr. Miu, correct?
Correct.
And it's while he's standing there holding the knife, that's the time that you're pushing him on the one side, and then just after that, Madison Cohen's pushing him on the other side, correct?
I believe so.
And it's right around there, too, in the middle of that, where he raises his left hand and calls back to his upriver to other people, correct?
I mean, in the video, yes, but I don't remember that.
After he gestures to other people, and this is where something happens and you don't have a memory of it, or you're like, he had contact with her face in some way, right?
Correct.
I want to show you some photos here starting at 2643, okay?
Okay.
We can see a bit of blonde hair and an elbow here. Is that Madison Cohen?
I think so, yes.
And then I'm going to scroll forward to 2655. Do you see that?
Yes.
At least is 2655. I'm going to move one more, I believe. Is this your elbow underneath Maddie's left hand,
Yes.
which is holding the can?
Yes, I believe so.
That's your elbow?
Yeah.
You're in between Mr. Miu and Madison Cohen. Agreed?
Right here, yes.
And so is Dante Carlson. He's in between Madison Cohen and Mr. Miu, correct?
Correct.
And you don't have a memory of exactly where people were or what happened just before this, other than Mr. Miu's hand went to her face in some manner, correct?
Correct.
One thing Nelson is trying to point out with the positioning of the parties at this moment is that it could cast doubt on whether the strike to Madison could have happened at the time it's claimed it did. Here's the key moment in real time once more, just to remind you how tricky this is. Now let's examine what data can be gleaned from that 2 odd seconds. At the start we can see a teen named Alex Vang laughing, which suggests nothing serious has happened yet. Less than a second later we can see another teen named Owen Peliquin with his mouth agape. He will testify this was a reaction to seeing the knife in Nick's hand. And in fact you can hear him yell, "Bro, he's got a knife," as he runs forward attempting to stop another teen named Ryan Nelson from advancing further. The instant Nick is on camera, he's already going down. Dante's punch has made contact. Madison is first captured within mere frames of that instant. So if we were to put the end point for when the strike to her could have happened just 1 frame before her body starts coming on screen, and we make the start point for when it could have happened right after Alex can be seen laughing and Owen's jaw has dropped, we have this. Not quite a second. Though strikes usually take less than a second to throw, so we're not doing too badly so far. But here's what Attorney Nelson was getting at. As soon as Madison is on screen, barely 1 second out from the earliest start point of Nick's strike, she's standing a good few feet away from Nick, with both Dante and Riley standing between the two, drink resting comfortably in Madison's hand. It's not that these facts disprove the proposition. People can keep a hold of drinks after being struck, and everyone agrees Nick striking Madison and Riley and Dante subsequently putting themselves between the two would have all happened quick. But this quick? Maybe. But it looks weird, right? And that sort of captures the job of defense attorneys in a situation like this. Short of being able to disprove the action, they want to get as many "but it looks weird" rights across to the jury as they can, in the hope that reasonable doubt will emerge and they will begin to entertain the possibility that the witnesses could be mistaken, or God forbid, even lying. Either works, really. Though when it came to Nick's alleged comments about looking for little girls, the defense didn't seem interested in putting the possibility of an innocent misunderstanding on the table. Now, the importance of this issue is sort of debatable, because if he didn't say it and the allegation was purely malicious, he still wouldn't be entitled to respond to it with violence. Not to mention he never stabbed anyone for making the accusation anyway. If he did say it, creepy as that would be, others would not be entitled to respond to that with violence either. Still though, Nick making the comment could be easily read as provocative and put him more at fault for creating the situation. Nick not making the comment and being maliciously lied about would make him significantly less at fault for creating the situation. More sympathetic, more likable. And while in theory, how criminally culpable a jury finds you probably shouldn't have anything to do with how likable they think you are, in practice, sometimes it can have a ton to do with it. And to that end, the defense have a bit of an advantage in that the originator of the accusation happens to be one of the state's least likable witnesses.
Grown man trying to have sex with little girls. What the hell? What the fuck? He's a raper. Whoa.
Mr. Cockfield, is that the first video they recorded of Mr. Miu that day?
Yes, sir.
Is that your voice?
Yep.
Did you hear yourself say he's a raper?
Yeah.
What was that all about?
He had said like a weird comment. That's kind of why I started recording in the first place. Like, because he was having his snorkel and it was like 2 feet deep water. So like, what are you doing? And then he just said like a weird comment, something about like some little girls.
After you said he was a raper, did he come closer to your group?
Yeah.
Did you restart your recording?
Yeah, because after I said that, I like looked away and was like, whoa, because he looks really scary when he looked at us.
Did you and others start yelling at him to get away?
Yeah.
You remember the kind of language you were using?
Yeah, we were just yelling, like saying like, what are you doing? Get out of here.
Were you calling him some names?
Yeah, calling him like a pedophile.
Right, why were you calling him a pedophile?
Because he was running up on some kids and he had said a weird comment earlier.
The interview that you gave with officers, at the hospital, you indicated that Mr. Miu told you that he was looking for a snorkel. Is that right?
That is what I said.
Okay. You never mentioned to officers that he told you anything about looking for little girls, correct?
If that's what it says.
Well, in a situation where you say he's looking for little girls, do you think it would be important that you would tell officers that he told you he was looking for little girls?
Yeah.
But you never do that, do you?
I guess I didn't.
Did you think it was important?
I guess there was more things that were more important, but that is important in the grand scheme, yes.
Right, so more important was he was looking for a snorkel.
Not really.
Okay, but you mentioned that, right? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. You guys were antagonizing Mr. Miu, right?
After the fact that he hit the woman, yes, we were.
You don't consider calling him a raper antagonizing him?
I mean, based on what he was doing, and it looked like that really, that made him chase after us afterwards, so who knows what he was really doing.
You're doing that to humiliate him, aren't you?
Not necessarily.
Well, what other reason would you be calling him names when you don't know anything about what's happening?
Trying to figure out the situation.
So the way that you're trying to figure out what's happening is by calling a grown man names, yes?
Yes.
You yelled to this blonde, he's looking for little girls.
Yes.
You don't have that information.
He said that. I remember him saying that. So
he said that. Hold on. You don't have that on tape.
Okay. True, it was not on my video.
And you never told that to the police. True?
True.
Okay. You begin to taunt him, don't you?
What do you mean by taunting?
Kind of get in a circle around him and all start pointing at him that he's a pedophile.
Object to the characterization of being in a circle around him. That's not the evidence.
That'll be up to the jury to decide. Objection overruled. It's cross-examination.
Is everyone being in a circle around Nick, in fact, the evidence? And why is Judge Michael Waterman deferring to the jury on a matter that one would think there must be a simple yes or no answer to? This comes down to a key point of contention between the defense and the prosecution in this case. The notion of Nick being surrounded. Surrounded has a simple, factual definition. To have something, in this case people, on all sides of you. Nick's situation during the initial conflict never fit into that simple, factual definition. He can be seen at various moments throughout with a clear path behind him. Once the real fight breaks out, there are moments where such a path becomes less clear, but we'll be getting into that more shortly. The point is, with the number of people not on his side steadily growing, along with the hostility, combined with collective actions like the teens forming a semicircle in his direction, the defense would contend it would be reasonable, from his perspective, to feel as if he had no way out, that he was effectively surrounded, even if not factually, while the prosecution would counter effectively schmectively, the facts are the facts and the language used should always reflect them. So, surrounded in a circle around, it's for the jury to decide if those characterizations are fair or not.
The purpose of taunting him and calling him a pedophile and pointing at him in that situation is what?
Kind of just to let them know what he was doing.
You already let them know what he was doing?
Yeah, but I guess it was just still going on.
What was still going on?
What you just described.
Well, I know what you're doing.
Okay.
The question is, why are you doing it?
I guess I don't know. It was 2 years ago.
Were you doing it to taunt him and humiliate him?
Not necessarily.
So why are you doing it?
Said I guess I don't necessarily know.
Any other explanation that you can think of as to why you would go around somebody pointing at him, taunting him, calling him names, other than to humiliate him?
No.
Well, he got his ass kicked, didn't he? Just for the record, other teens who were near Juwan at the time of the alleged looking for little girls comment, Alex Vang, Owen Peliquin and Landon Wire, all testified to hearing it as well. Also, just for the record, they too neglected to mention it in their police interviews. But that's enough of that, because as mentioned, if all the taunting and jeering was none of Nick's fault, he's not automatically off the hook for any of the stabs he subsequently inflicted. The jury will need to evaluate each one of those individually, so let's do the same, going in chronological order. We'll start from when Nick first went down.
I believe I saw Maddie get pulled in the back of her hair and then punched in the face. It could also be that she just got punched in the face and I had seen like the after, like her face get flung, and that's why I thought her head got pulled.
Do you recall like how far away you were when you saw that happen to Maddie?
I was probably about halfway in between the groups. Or maybe a little closer to the teens group.
Still on your way over?
Yeah. After he had hit Maddie in the face, I saw someone else hit him, and I wasn't sure who. I saw him fall into the water. My intention was, because I used to work at elementary schools and had experience breaking up fights with little kids and stuff like that, so my intention was to go over there and try and break it up. So I went to push his shoulder in the front, but ultimately didn't. As I reached down to push him in the shoulders, he reached up and got me with the knife.
Do you have a scar?
Yeah, quite a big one.
Are you comfortable showing the jury?
Yeah, I can do that. It stops right there. There's a little gap there because it hit my ribs, but
okay. Thank you.
What we know is when you spoke with the police on August 4th, quote, the suspect had one of the girls, Maddie, by the head with his hand, and then I watched him pull her hair. You don't mention in that sentence anything about a punch, correct?
I didn't in that sentence, no. I might have later on.
Other things that you said on that day were that you didn't touch Mr. Miu, correct?
I said that that was a possibility.
Were you touching him when you were getting stabbed? The answer, no. If I did, like my hand was on the shoulder, maybe, but it wasn't forceful.
Yeah.
Those are the words that you said?
So I had said possibly not, but I also did give credit to the fact that I could have touched him.
You said that you saw, I think you said in your words, the black guy hit him, correct?
I thought it was him, but I wasn't sure.
Okay. During your interview, you said to the police, I wanted to get the guy away from us, but I wasn't going to try and like punch him. I'm not a fighter. I'm tiny. That's what you told the police, right?
Yeah, I was the biggest I'd ever been in my life, and I was still not a super big guy. He had 80 pounds on me.
At some point, Mr. Miu goes down into the water from Mr. Dante Carlson punching him, right?
Yes.
So then we see in the slides, your leg, you kind of approach and stand over him, correct?
I wouldn't say over him. I would say I'm to the side of him, and then he starts moving, and my body position plus where he moved himself would make it appear that way.
Sure. This man, at that point, you knew he had been punched and knocked to the ground, and he's in the water, correct?
Yep.
What you were trying to do is you were trying to get him away from other people while he's down in the ground in the water.
Get people away in some way, shape, or form. It didn't need to be him. I wanted him to stay down so he couldn't go and punch another person.
But you didn't go to the other people. You went to Mr. Miu, correct?
Yeah, I went to the guy who was punching people first.
So when he's down in the water on the ground and you're standing there trying to be the peacemaker because you're not a fighter, you thought it was going to be peaceful to you to keep him down in the water?
I mean, it was shallow water. His head wasn't below. All we needed was an extra second to get people to move away from him.
You don't see your friend Dante come up and smack him across the face a second time. You don't see that.
I saw him get dropped into the water, and I was looking down at him. My hair was over my eyes here. I mean, it was shorter than it is now, but you can imagine.
His first time in the water was extended for a longer period of time because Dante smacked him when he was already down in the water.
Sure, yes.
And you were saying you were standing right there, but you didn't observe that.
No, like I said, my hair was in the way, and I wasn't really focused on Dante. I didn't know where Dante was. I was focused on the man who was hitting people.
At that point, the man that was hitting people was Dante Carlson.
It's the man who started the physical altercation.
Okay. When you saw him fall in the water, you went up to him from behind.
No.
I apologize, but I'm going to need to show some slides.
Yeah, I mean, I can explain what I did, moving at him from what would be his front left side.
And then eventually you come to be behind him, correct?
When I would still say I'm at the midpoint of his body, he just sat up. That wouldn't necessarily constitute being behind someone. I mean, yes, I was, I guess, technically, but he wasn't there when I walked there. He moved himself to have me behind him. Until he starts.
This is you with your left hand on his back shoulder,
Yeah,
and his
but
right hand on his back shoulder. You're behind him, correct?
yeah, I have both hands on one shoulder. I'm not completely behind him. You can see I'm somewhat on the side. But yes, I'm somewhat behind him due to his repositioning.
You're pushing him, correct?
Yeah, that's where I had said that I thought I'd push him in the front left shoulder to keep him down, but I was there too late, so I didn't get that shoulder. I guess I got the back of it, and...
You said you're a peacemaker, right? You like to mediate?
Yeah, that's what I was trying to do.
You could understand how somebody who'd been down in the water and hit 2 times, getting pushed from behind, may not understand that you're trying to mediate.
I
You might
guess.
misunderstand that, right?
He could misunderstand that.
Sure.
I mean, could have been solved if he tried to use words at all, too.
Could have. You could agree that in this position, with somebody pushing him from behind and somebody hitting him in the front, it might be a difficult time to use your words to make peace.
Yeah, the right time to use your words would have been before he punched a woman in the face.
You could understand how perhaps somebody in the position getting pushed from behind in the water might not appreciate that you were trying to protect him and keep him okay, right?
I
Does
guess.
his head appear to be getting wet there?
Not his face. That's where your mouth is. I see maybe the right cheek dip in a little bit, but as soon as go a few slides further and you'll see his head sit back up again.
Sure. Safe as can be, right?
I don't know.
It is. Yeah, please, let's focus on the facts. Just clean Q&A, please.
Have you ever fallen back after getting laid out in the water like that?
Yeah, I have.
Okay. Did it feel like maybe the water was coming up on you even if it technically didn't?
No, I mean, water usually has a pretty distinct feeling on your skin. I mean,
And when you had that experience where you got laid out and fell back into the water, did someone come up and attack you a second time in that situation?
Sustained.
It's a shame we never got to hear more details about AJ's incredibly similar life experience here, but fair enough, things were getting a bit off track. Regardless of whether or not that happened, it's worth remembering that AJ isn't on trial for anything. Not for pushing Nick however hard, not for lunging at him, not for being sort of pouty and annoying. Whatever wrongdoing he may be guilty of, slow as he may be to acknowledge it, having his intestines ripped out would seem punishment enough. The main reason he's on the stand is to give both sides an opportunity to drill down on the circumstances of his stabbing. How he represents what's on tape likely won't have that much of an impact, given it is, after all, on tape.
So you and Dante are standing very near Mr. Miu as he's beginning to try to get up out of the water, correct?
correct.
And as he begins to get up out of the water, you move towards him, correct?
Yeah.
You push him down again, correct?
I would say we kind of attacked each other at that one, if anything, but I mean,
Okay.
I didn't, he got me before I did anything to him, so.
This is your hands on him, agreed?
Okay, maybe my hand is on his arm, yeah.
This is you, as you said, attacking him, correct?
I didn't mean attacking, sorry.
Those are the words that you used to the jury.
I mean...
You were attacking him.
I wasn't attacking him. I was trying to separate, or get him isolated so that we could separate everyone else from him.
You agree that even though you're not, as you say, you're not a fighter, you pushed a man from behind while your friend was smacking him in the front. Agreed?
I would...
Hold on. Sustained. We've been through this before many times. Please.
You have an
Please. I am speaking.
I'm sorry.
Please move to a new topic.
I apologize, Judge. I thought you were done.
Attorney Nelson seems to have his own issues acknowledging wrongdoing. The judge was clearly mid-sentence. Nelson, in all likelihood, just got caught up in his palpable dislike for A.J. Martin.
Do you have any explanation as to why you pushed him while your friend was hitting him if you're not a fighter?
Objection.
I already answered
No,
this.
please.
Asked and answered.
Sustained.
Was it because you got caught up with the crowd?
It was because I couldn't see the person in front of me because my hair was blocking my vision and I was focused on the man who had just punched a 23-year-old or 22-year-old girl in the face.
That's all.
Here's the key moment again in real time. And now some key takeaways. Just shy of 2 seconds after first landing in the water, Nick is smacked in the face by Dante, though who did it doesn't matter as much as the fact that Nick experienced it. 2 seconds after being smacked, Nick is being pushed down face forward by AJ. Why AJ is pushing him doesn't matter as much as the fact that Nick is experiencing it, and whether or not the jury think that experience could lead him to reasonably believe he was in danger of death or great bodily harm. To that end, they may find it relevant that within less than 1 second of the push being initiated, Nick has managed to recover somewhat, winding up on his knees rather than face down in the water. Though it should also be remembered that this moment is still only 3 seconds out from him being smacked in the face. Within milliseconds from getting up on his knees, we can see Nick recover his knife from the water, and the edge of AJ's hand has come into frame. He's moving forward. It is again mere milliseconds between this moment and the point we can clearly see Nick's blade has gone into AJ's abdomen. Over the course of those milliseconds, Nick's body, with the exception of his arms, is moving backward, while AJ's body is moving forward. Whether or not you believe stab 1 was justified, it's pretty much a lock for easiest to defend. It came first when the crowd wasn't letting up because most people hadn't realized Nick had a knife. It also happened within seconds of Nick being smacked in the face while on his back in the water, which could certainly rattle one's senses and affect their judgment. And it's documented Nick stabbed AJ at a time AJ was advancing. Attacking each other, one might say, if they weren't watching their words carefully. But each stab will be judged on its own merits, and Nick's not going to have this set of facts going for him on every count. Let's look at stab 2. That's stab 2. The actual stabbing of Riley Madison wasn't caught on tape, as you may remember from our first walkthrough. And as you may also remember, Riley herself doesn't remember much of anything.
I remember her being punched in the face, and then I remember being stabbed, and that is completely it.
Did you see or don't you remember anyone else stabbed?
No.
What else do you remember about you getting stabbed?
I just remember seeing Nick's face very blank and not lunging at me, but just kind of poking me, and I held my side and I was like, ow, like, Janelle, I think he punched me. That really hurt, like, and I looked down and I was bleeding out and holding my stomach, and it just, like, didn't feel real. Like, it was just a lot of shock, and from there I was walking around the river asking for help, like just asking somebody to help me. I told Q that I felt like I was dying because I just was losing so much blood, and every time I'd walk I just felt like I was getting weaker and weaker.
Though Riley can't offer much in terms of specifically how the stab came about, we do know it was a serious wound, as opposed to a shallow warning prick or whatever you might like to call it. Her lung was punctured, and surgeons had to put her stomach back into place. Being the only female stabbing victim, the prosecution will put quite a lot of emphasis on her size. At 5'5", weighing about 115 pounds, what could Riley have possibly been doing off camera that would lead Nick to believe such force was necessary to avoid death or great bodily harm?
Do you recall telling law enforcement you don't remember if you hit him or said something to make him angry?
I do remember saying that. I think I was trying to maybe find a reason why he did what he did to me.
Do you have any memory of actually hitting him or saying anything?
I don't remember saying anything, hitting him, touching him, nothing.
Given her size, it's questionable whether Riley hitting Nick would even be enough to get him over the hurdle he needs to, but it would certainly be better than nothing, so the defense did whatever they could to find support for the notion beyond her statement to police.
So I'm going to go back to 2858. As we scroll through, does it appear as if you are turning around your body?
Yes.
And you would be then going back in a direction towards Mr. Miu, correct?
I don't believe that I did, no.
Let me go back again here.
I'm
So
turning
just-
around, yes. I don't know where I'm going, though.
So we agree that you turn around, correct?
Well, yes,
We don't know how far you turn around, correct?
correct.
We know at some point that you and Mr. Miu are really close, correct?
Yes, I believe he walked up to me, though.
And when you say belief, you don't have a memory of it, correct?
Correct, but I've seen the video a lot, and I'm not facing the way he's facing. I'm facing the opposite way.
And later on, the defense, quite ruthlessly, turned her own stab wound against her.
Can you just touch on you with your right hand where it is?
Right here.
Okay. Fair to say that as you stand there right how you are right now, your left arm is protecting that area.
Yes.
And if you raise your left arm, push it up, raise it, shoulder, is that area now exposed?
Yes.
Is it now vulnerable to being cut?
Yes.
Is it vulnerable to being cut where you're at right now?
No.
No. And so, from deduction, would you agree that maybe your hand was outstretched towards him in that moment?
I do not agree to that.
Sustained.
Okay. You don't have a memory of it.
I do not.
All you know is you couldn't have done it when your hand's down at your side, correct?
Objection, speculation.
She's already said that, but
Okay.
let's move on.
Good lawyering. And the reason it's good lawyering is Nelson made his pretty good point appear significantly stronger than it truly is.
And if you raise your left arm,
When he first gives the direction, Riley complies in a way that is adequate. Her arm is raised, and raised just enough to expose the area she was stabbed in, but not in a manner that corresponds with assault. So Nelson just straight up shows her what he wants her to do, and she mirrors him.
push it up, raise it, shoulder. Is that area now exposed?
Yes.
As it was with Riley's first demonstration, though admittedly more so. And there are other arm raise gestures she could do to expose the wound area even more still. She could point sideways like, "Get the hell out of here," or even raise her hands above her head like, "Please don't stab me." But Nelson made sure to not give instructions that would elicit such gestures, because good lawyering is all about taking witnesses where you need them to go. Once more, here's the section of footage in which Stab 2 must have happened in real time. Technically, the parameters for when the stab could have happened are actually a tad tighter on each end, but it's helpful to have that extra bit of context for how people are positioned. Some key moments, or potentially key at least. Nick begins getting up just as Riley begins turning her body in his direction. Riley goes out of frame, and less than a second later we lose sight of Nick too. It's here where the real start point for when Stab 2 could have happened sits. 2 seconds later, we see Tony Carlson pointing and Alex Vang looking concerned in the same direction. Over the course of the second that follows, we see Nick moving his knife arm in a sort of thrusting motion, but the frame is just a bit too tight to know for sure if we're seeing the stab. We do know, however, that immediately after that arm motion is seen, Riley appears in frame maybe a few feet from Nick, walking in the opposite direction, clutching her wound. The stab has happened. In terms of the precise circumstances that led up to it, got nothing for you, sorry. Stab 2 is tricky. On to Stab 3. So like Stab 2, we don't actually see the knife go in, but we 100% do see the stabbing motion and the precise circumstances that led up to it. And unfortunately for Nick, those circumstances are not as favourable as AJ's, nor are they as ambiguous as Riley's. In fact, Tony Carlson appears to actually be everything that AJ Martin claimed he was. An innocent party who was attempting to de-escalate the situation, only to be rewarded with a knife in his side.
As I went over there, I started yelling at people to back up and get away. I don't remember exactly who I was yelling at. I know I was yelling at everyone in the situation, not just one side or the other.
Is that you walking by?
Yes.
Looks like you're getting between Mr. Miu and the guy filming.
Yes.
It looks like up to this point, your attention was to somebody off to the right. Now you're turning back towards Mr. Miu.
I was turning back towards the group, yeah, to see who else needed to be, if anybody was still escalating anything or what was going on. I was just trying to separate everyone.
Looks like you're pointing and yelling something in the direction of Mr. Miu.
Yeah, from my recollection, I saw him walking up towards the others, so I was going to him to tell him to stop and to walk away.
What are you doing at this point in the video?
There was a lot of yelling going on, and I was telling him to walk away, but it looked like he was walking up to the girls in my group, so I was trying to get his attention, so I just put my hand on his back.
So after you put your hands on his back, telling him to walk away, what happened?
At the time, I thought he was going in to try and punch me, so I tried to hit his hand down, and then he went at me again. I have a scar right here from when I knocked it down. The knife hit and just scratched. And then after that, he came again and stabbed me.
Does it look like it's bleeding through the Band-Aid, or is that just the tone of the Band-Aid? Do you know?
No, it was bleeding a little bit through the Band-Aid from the stitches.
It would be more or less impossible to look at the stabbing of Tony as justified if viewing it from a third-party perspective. If viewing it from the perspective of Nick, as the jury are instructed to, well, it's still far from a slam dunk, but at least the defense have some mitigating factors to work with, and they don't have much if anything to do with Tony's actions, but rather what Nick had been experiencing in the moments leading up to stabbing Tony, and what the defense would like you to look at as a cloud of confusion. As we break each section of the video down, it's easy to forget how close all the moments are to each other. So again, as a reminder to that end, here's the video in real time from Nick going down up until stabbing Tony. 13 seconds. Not a lot of time to get your bearings and have a full appreciation of what around you is and isn't a threat. So in cross-examining Tony, Attorney Nelson won't try to cast him as a bad guy, but rather attempt to elicit answers that will affirm Nick was being ganged up on, and that Tony should have been in a position to understand as much at the time he approached him.
You said, I was yelling at people to back up, I was yelling at everyone, not just one side or the other. That's what you said, correct?
Yes.
And let's just talk about the sides here for a moment, okay? On the one side, there was 13 people. Agreed?
I didn't know at the time, but now I do, yes.
And on the other side, there was Mr. Miu, correct?
Yes.
You were yelling, back up, telling people to stop, correct?
Yes, because I saw a large group together. I just saw a bunch of bodies together. I didn't see anything specific.
And those bodies were all around Mr. Miu, the person who had got hit and was in the water, correct?
I didn't know who was surrounding who.
You agree that one person can't surround anyone, agreed?
Yes.
So you agree if there's somebody being surrounded, it would be Mr. Miu, correct?
Objection. Has an answer. He said he doesn't know who was being surrounded.
Sustained.
You don't know who was being surrounded, but you saw somebody being surrounded, correct?
No, I just saw a large group in a huddled conversation. They were all yelling,
Okay. You never saw him with a knife, correct?
Yes.
So you weren't telling people to back up from him because you were worried about him. You were telling people to back up from him because you wanted them to stop beating him up, right?
No, I wanted everyone to step away because I didn't know what the situation was again.
So you remember approaching a person, someone, correct?
Yes.
One hand was on the person's back, correct?
I mean, I gave him a light tap because there was a lot of yelling and I was trying to get his attention away from the girls that he was walking towards.
And as I slide forward, you can see your hand, your fingers making an indentation in his back and his skin there, correct?
Yes.
Do you remember pushing him in that moment?
No.
You would agree that's not gentle what you're doing right now?
I would say it is.
Okay.
Here's the key moment at a few different speeds for you to judge for yourself if it's gentle or not.
And as you're here, this is where we see your face, correct?
Yes.
Are you now yelling at him?
I think I was trying to raise my voice enough to where over everyone else screaming and yelling yes.
Mr. Miu here has the knife in his right hand, correct?
Yes.
That's your foot, that's your body, you're right there, correct? Yep. You are not wounded in that moment, correct?
Correct.
You don't receive the wound that causes the 2 stitches until after you've approached him from behind and tried to redirect him while you're yelling, correct?
Yes, correct.
So it's not until you engage with him that he engages with you. Agreed?
Agreed.
Nothing else.
Better than nothing, right? Next is stab 4, which resulted in the death of Isaac Schumann. In a case that has an overriding theme of quickness, Isaac's fatal stab really stands out. The knife has gone in and out of him within a second of Nick finishing his stab of Tony. Isaac, of course, is not able to give his side of the story, but what's caught on tape is fairly straightforward. Just as Nick removes the knife from Tony, he begins turning around as Isaac's hands come into frame. They make their way up to Nick's neck as Nick's body goes back and his knife arm goes forward. The knife pierces Isaac's chest and his hands release from Nick's neck in almost the same instant they made contact with it. There's not really anything more to observe than that. It's a second. All that's left now is stab 5, which you may recall is not captured by Jawan's video. It is, however, captured in extremely scant detail by Larry and Davis, who began filming moments earlier from significantly further away. Here's a reminder of how that came out in the wash.
At some point, are you stabbed?
Yes. I was pushed away, and then I heard screaming going on behind me, so I had turned around, and then I was looking at Nick, and he was standing maybe 6 feet in front of me. He just walked towards me and stabbed me.
Is that, looks like a little bit off to the center, to the left, right below your rib cage?
Right below my rib cage, yeah.
In the jury seat?
An interesting thing about the cross-examination of Dante is the defense spent just about all of it scrutinizing his claim to have witnessed Madison being struck before punching Nick, and other representations he made of the initial scuffle and the lead-up to it. In terms of the circumstances surrounding his actual stabbing and the representation you just heard him give of that, they did not ask one single question. Why might that be? Well, as much as Davis's video can't show us, what it can almost only supports what Dante testified to. This blurry figure is Nick, that blurry figure is Dante. They start a good 6 feet or more from each other, as Dante said. They then begin moving toward each other, though Nick looks like he's closing more ground. Then about as soon as they're squared up, suddenly the stab happens. Now bear in mind, the video doesn't give us anything either party might be saying, nor can it show us any of the nuances in their body language or facial expressions. But everything it does give us is bad for the defense, save maybe the fact it shows Dante closing some ground himself. So it makes sense for them to avoid drilling down on the video in the pursuit of a small win like that. With that, we've now covered all 5 stabbings. So what happened afterward? Well, Nicolae Miu said and did a whole lot of things to make life even harder for his attorneys is what happened. First of all, instead of making any moves to turn himself in and get ahead of what just happened, he and his friend Ariel just sort of moseyed on back to their group's tubes, where Nick sat, floated downstream, and attempted to act as if nothing had happened.
Did he say anything to you as he came up to you?
No.
Did he ever say anything to you about what happened?
Never, we never spoke after that again.
Did you eventually float away?
Got on tubes and we didn't listen to no music. We just floated and just ready to get off the river at that time. We didn't want to be there no more.
Was there any kind of conversation as you're floating down the river?
Never, no.
When police located and apprehended Nick a little later, he again failed to come clean, playing coy in the back of the police car instead.
Still doing all right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I hear somebody got stabbed. And I fit the description.
Yes, you do.
All right.
Yep, so we're working through that now.
Eventually, he was taken to the police station, where he was interviewed by Lieutenant Brandy Hart.
I have bigger dreams now, shattered, but anyway, I don't want to talk about them right now.
Okay.
How bad is it?
Well, can we get through this form and ask each other questions? I want to maintain the integrity of this investigation and your rights, and, so I want to get through this form and then we can ask questions, okay? You have the right to consult an attorney before making any statement or answering any question, and you may have him or her present with you during questioning.
Okay.
And also, stop me, I talk kind of fast.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about this one.
Okay.
So,
yep.
When do I see one? When do I get one assigned to me?
You would get one assigned to you, the soonest would be on Monday.
Oh.
It's sort of appropriate that the cameraman panned away from the screen and over to Nick's lawyers, because they must be seething right now. They fought to keep this interrogation out, and one of the reasons they cited was the, we'll just say, erroneous impression that Nick may have been put under that he wouldn't be able to talk to a lawyer till after the weekend. In reality, someone would have been able to take his call and give him counsel before then. In fairness, he did ask when an attorney would be assigned to him, and getting a public defender formally assigned to his case probably would have to wait till Monday. Nick was then read his rights and did opt to waive them, but the defense argued because he made queries about seeing an attorney, he may well have made a different decision had he not been put under the impression that speaking to one was 24 plus hours away, and that should void his waiver, making his interrogation out of bounds at trial. The court ruled against the defense, citing the interrogation's probative value, a decision which some civil libertarians might find upsetting. But what's done is done, and while we're not going to sugarcoat things so much as saying having your interrogation played in court is ever really a net positive, maybe if Nick can be forthright and sincere throughout all of this, he might be able to score some points with the jury and offset some of the inevitable damage that comes from going on the record too early without prep.
All I can say, it was self-defense. Self-defense, there were lots of people that came on to me. Self-defense, and they produced 2 weapons, one I took from them.
Oh no.
I've never been in a situation like this, where people produce weapons and they were saying, you're a child molester, you're this. And I said, if I'm a child molester, you should be having alcohol. I was snorkeling, so they took my snorkel away, they threw it in the water. They grabbed my pants, one wanted to pull my pants down, and I grabbed onto him, and I don't know who that kid was, but he had a knife on him. And then there was another knife, a longer knife, looked like a kitchen knife, kitchen or something, I don't know. And I don't know what happened to either one of them. I just know that when the kid attacked me, I took that from him.
The kitchen knife or the other
knife?
No,
the smaller knife. Another group of mostly girls came over from the other side, yelling at me or calling me child molester, and I went back. I actually out there with this incident. I don't even know what happened.
Okay.
I just know that they attacked me, and I was in self-defense. I went into self-defense mode, and then I went over to my group of people. That was it. And they asked me what happened, and I wouldn't tell them. They got off their tubes. They came after me. They pushed me. One of them hit me, and then there was a girl that came from here and hit me in the back of my head. And I was about right there.
You said right here?
When she hit me, yeah.
Based on the sequence of events, it sounds as if the girl Nick saying hit him was Riley. Him making the claim isn't proof in itself, of course, but it's more credible if made on record the same day.
I mean, I feared for my life. Tell you the truth, when they started hitting me and pointed a knife at me, and then another kid pointed a knife, I thought that was it for me. Luckily, I took it from one of the young kids, and I think that's when I swung back.
What did you do with it?
I don't even know.
Okay.
Nick washed the blood off the knife and discarded it on a nearby riverbank where it didn't take long for police to find it. The prosecution, of course, will cast his attempt to dispose of the weapon and all the lies he's telling as clear indications of guilty knowledge. In other words, if, from his perspective, he was so confident his actions were within the bounds of self-defense, why so evasive?
and one had it in his hand, so I took his hand and I bent it and I poked him with his own hand. And then I took it from his hand and then I went and swung like this.
Lying about one of his assailants producing a knife was bad enough, but these new Jack Reacher askew embellishments are making things worse. It seems Nick may have never been aware he was being recorded.
Did you have a knife with
No,
you?
no, absolutely.
Okay.
I had one earlier that I used to cut, but I don't even know what I did with it. I think I either gave it to one of the people or I put it back in my truck.
Yeah.
I really don't know. Everything happened so fast. I really don't remember why they attacked me. I don't know why they took my snorkel away. I don't know why one of them wanted to pull my pants down. I don't know why they were being so mean. I just don't know.
Yeah.
I just don't know. And why did they want to scare me with a knife? I just don't know why they're scaring people on the river. It's a family-oriented river with knives and you know what they did. We ate well. We had music. Everything was so good, so good, so good. Of course, I had a lot of alcohol. Who doesn't? You know,
Well, you had a sober ride. So,
yeah.
And I don't smell it on you.
Something not hugely important, but still kind of interesting, is Nick seems to be the only one involved with this who wants to exaggerate the amount he was drinking. Most witnesses from the other groups appeared to try and downplay their level of intoxication to one degree or another whenever the issue was broached at trial. Nick was not stone sober, but he certainly never looked trashed. Maybe he thinks if he was, that might be treated as a mitigating factor.
Were you drinking beer or vodka or what?
No.
Okay.
We don't do hard liquor because then we dehydrate too fast and then we get cramps.
Okay.
So after my quadruple bypass, I still have cramps.
Oh, yikes. Quadruple bypass? How long ago was that?
A year and a half ago.
Wow.
The quadruple bypass is something we haven't had occasion to mention yet, and unlike alcohol consumption, Nick's defense absolutely will point to it as a mitigating factor, arguing that given his increased risk of a serious cardiac event, Nick is liable to feel in more danger than the average person might when exposed to the sorts of hazards seen in the video. Next, Lieutenant Hart reveals to Nick that they have the incident on tape.
Is this you?
Yes.
Okay. What do you think was happening at that time?
They were fighting me. They pointed the knife at me. Both boys pointed the knife at me.
Sticking with this lie in the wake of the revelation that it's all on tape is obviously a very bad idea. No one's ever accused Nick Miu of being a stupid man. It seems he's still not thinking straight. He triples down on it too.
As soon as he came with the knife, I grabbed the knife from him. And what I did then, I twisted his arm and poked him with his own knife. Then I took it from him and I started swinging.
Okay.
So what happened? Can you tell me what happened?
Yes. 4 people went to the hospital with injuries.
Oh my God.
And 1 person died.
Oh no.
I don't know any of their names and I don't know any genders, so I don't know.
Was that because they fought each other, or is that
I don't know. I don't know what their injuries are.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
With the severity of the situation confirmed, Nick begins to appreciate more just how in over his head he is, and starts engaging in some denial/wishful thinking. You may have caught the hopeful question about whether the injuries came from fighting each other. Soon he turns his attention to the recording, and seems to be fishing to see if only still pictures were captured.
You know, in your statement.
What other pictures did they give you of me?
Just that one. That's the only one I have.
They didn't take... They have lots of cameras. You should take their cameras.
Yes, and so I have colleagues,
Yeah.
investigators that are talking to all of those, you know, the people in the group and the other witnesses. So yes, we are trying to collect.
Then he tries to see if they found his knife.
They didn't find any of those 2 knives?
I don't know. I don't know, but we're looking, and you know, we're looking before it gets dark out. Right now it is
I'm glad I actually took that kid's knife. He would have stabbed me. He was not there to scare me. He was there to harm me. At least I'm here. But I'm sorry for how it ended up.
And no doubt he is, but what's done is done. And after that interview, Nicolae Miu had given himself more still to answer for at trial. Taking the stand in your defence at trial is pretty much always a very high-risk proposition, and often it's wise to take the fifth, let the evidence do the talking, and not open yourself to cross-examination. Trying to explain yourself to a jury is different from trying to explain yourself to the cops though. Sometimes it is worth taking the risk with the former. And when it comes to a case where so much hinges on the defendant's perspective, Nick more or less had to try to get that perspective across.
You're the Nick Miu we've been talking about for the past 7 days?
Yes, sir.
When you spoke with Brandy Hart, were you truthful to her about the knife?
No. I lied about the knife.
Was that your knife?
Yes, it is. It was.
Did you bring it with you when you went to go look for the phone?
Yes, I did.
When you went to go look for the phone, did you have any intent to harm anybody?
No.
Are you walking upriver or downriver?
Upriver, away from the boys.
Did you hear those words that I have written on that slide?
Yes.
Prior to your hearing those words when you were walking upriver, had you had verbal contact with that group?
I think so. They asked me what I was looking for, and I told them I'm looking for a phone, a lost phone.
Did you ever tell them that you were looking for little girls?
No.
Were you looking for little girls?
Absolutely not. It's pathetic.
What did you see when you were looking at that group of teenagers after the end of this video?
I saw one of them holding a phone in a bag, and I believed it was what I was looking for, so I turned around and I started approaching them. Started walking, then I rushed the pace, stumbled, and fell on my knees, held onto their tube, at which point I lost my goggle and snorkel kit in the water.
You saw during your interview with Brandy Hart that you said things different than what you just said now about what happened to your snorkel and goggles.
Mm-hmm.
Now that you've watched the video, do you realize that you were wrong about that?
Yes.
What happened to your goggles?
My goggles fell in the water.
When they fell in the water, what did you do?
I started looking for them, searching right where they fell.
When you were doing that, did you ever hear the kids say anything?
They gave me a warning.
What'd they say?
You got 10 seconds.
We can't know for sure which of the teens made that comment, but the defense managed to elicit a denial of responsibility from each living witness that took the stand. The implication being that it must have been Isaac Schumann who made the threatening remark. The prosecution put a fair amount of emphasis on the point that Isaac can't be seen doing much of anything to stir the pot until the moment he rushes Nick before being fatally stabbed. So you can see why the defense would be looking for anything they can to undercut that contention and cast Isaac as a hostile actor in the initial confrontation. Next, they addressed the alleged strike of Madison Cohen.
Do you remember what Madison did, if anything, to you?
She grabbed my right arm and she pulled me towards her, and I lost my balance, so I moved towards her.
Did you consider that in that circumstance to be a gentle or a gracious touch?
No, that was not a gracious touch. No, not at all.
Had she been using any gentle or gracious words with you?
Not that, no, not that I remember.
Did you have your knife in your right hand?
Yes.
What did you do with your left hand?
With my left hand, I pushed her away from my face.
Can you show us what you did with your left hand? Do you recall having contact with her?
I may have, yes.
Okay. Do you remember in particular where, if at all, you touched her?
No.
Okay. Would it surprise you if you touched her?
No.
Was that, in fact, your purpose in pushing her away?
Absolutely.
Okay.
She was in my space.
So now we have the defense's official version. Nick concedes pushing his hand out in the general direction of Madison's face, but doesn't know if or exactly where his hand made contact. In terms of material evidence tending to support or contradict that claim, it's all the same as we went over during the prosecution's version.
After you did that, did people do something to you?
Yeah.
What was done to you?
Yeah, almost right away I got punched and fell in the water.
Do you remember how you felt when you fell back into the water?
I was very afraid, of course.
On this fear scale that you've talked about before, where are you on that scale from 0 to 10?
Right at the top, 10.
Have you ever been at that 10 before in your life?
Never been in a situation like this or a fight in my life.
Have you ever been at a 10?
Never.
What happened to your head?
Well, I fell in the water. Obviously, that's a river, and I hit my head on river rock, and my whole body went under. Well,
where did you feel the water on your body?
Over my face, my mouth. Okay. I felt like I was submerged in water at the moment.
Did you try to get up?
Yes.
Why did you want to get up? Why didn't you just lay down there peacefully in the water?
To drown? No, I wouldn't want to do that. I wanted to get up out of the water.
At that moment, when you're down in the water, had anybody like A.J. Martin come up to you and said, just lay there and rest?
Somebody came from behind, yes. I found out later who he was, and pushed me down and to keep me in the water.
What's happening to you there?
I'm getting hit on the head.
How many times at that point, is your memory of watching the video and your memory of experiencing this, have you been hit in the head now, but either by people or by the ground or by the water?
4 times at least.
In that time when you're down on the ground, did you think there was a way for you to escape?
No.
Did you feel like you could just crawl away or run away or walk away or do anything else to escape?
Not in that position.
How did your body feel the next day?
I hurt everywhere. My head hurt, my throat hurt.
When you felt the pain about your throat, did you see anything that refreshed your memory about what caused that pain to your throat?
After watching the video, yes.
What's happening to you there?
Somebody is going for my throat, squeezing my throat.
What did you think was going to happen to you in that moment?
The whole time I felt like I was going to die, so basically I feared for my life.
When people stopped attacking you, what did you do?
I walk away.
When you're walking away, you've talked about this fear scale. Where are you on the fear scale? Does it just go down right to 0? Does it stay at 10? Does something else happen?
No, as soon as I saw the people I trusted, my fear level started creeping down.
But when you first start walking back, what's the number of it?
About 8.
An interesting thing about the direct examination of Nick Miu is the defense never addresses the stabbing of Dante Carlson, though they seem to be doing it indirectly with the line of questioning you just saw, and Nick kind of flubbed it. So Attorney Nelson gave him quite a suggestive question. When you're walking away, does your fear scale go down right to 0? Obviously not right to 0, right? But Nick doesn't quite take his cue. As soon as I saw people I trusted, my fear level started creeping down. Not a disastrous answer, it was creeping down. But Dante's stab takes place after Nick's friend Ariel is with him, which according to Nick was a definite source of comfort. So Nelson had to prod him again to get the answer they needed. Nick wasn't at a 10 on the fear scale in that moment, but still about an 8.
Why'd you toss the knife?
I was overwhelmed with just fear, residual fear. And I didn't want to have anything to do with that.
Okay. When you used the knife, did you believe you were under attack?
Yes.
Why?
They punched me, they pushed me down, they threw me in the water, I hit my head, yes. So,
what do you believe would have happened to you had you not used your knife?
I would have died. I believe I would have been killed that day. At that specific time.
Why'd you use your knife?
To defend myself.
Those are the only questions I have, Judge.
Nick Miu, all in all, gave a good direct examination, coming across, all in all, as sympathetic. But of course, doing well on direct is much easier than doing well on cross, which, fortunately for the defense, started off pretty weak.
Once the tubes are tied together with the rope, and you said that you thought that you put it back in your car, you don't have a reason to have the knife anymore, right? It accomplished its purpose, right?
I didn't know that at the time.
All right. Did you tell the cops, that the police, that you didn't think you were going to need it, and that's why you thought you put it in the car?
I may have.
All right.
It's all well and good that Nick kept the knife on him after it served its immediate practical purpose and lied to police about leaving it in the car. But really, unless the prosecution is seeking to convince the jury that he kept it in his pocket at the time he went searching for the phone because secretly he was just hankering for a stabberin, pursuing the matter is a bit of a waste of time.
You weren't going to need your knife for that task that you set out to do, right?
I wouldn't even need anything.
But you brought it with you anyhow.
It happened to be in my pocket, yes.
Once you got over to where Isaac Schumann's group was, they made it readily apparent they did not want you over by them, correct?
That's not true.
They didn't call you names?
Yes, but they asked me what I was looking for. And I thought they were polite people. I said, I'm looking for my lost phone.
They did not want you by them, and they told you that, right?
At some point, yes.
And that's the short video. You turn around and you're walking away, right?
Yes.
But then Joanne Cockfield calls you a raper, right?
Yes.
And then you turn around.
Yes.
And you were angry.
I was not angry.
Oh, you were not angry that someone called you a raper?
No.
All right. You look at Joanne, who's filming you, right?
Yeah.
And for some reason, your testimony is that even though many people on the river have these phones and these float cases, you decided that was the phone and you needed to run up and check.
Objection argumentative.
Sustained.
Instead of walking up and saying, hey, is that the phone I'm looking for? You ran up on these boys, didn't you?
I ran up and stumbled, and then I fell right by their, yes.
That's my next question. You're claiming now that you stumbled.
Yes.
You've never said that before today, ever, to anybody, any law enforcement or anybody else. Right?
But I have seen the videos now.
Well, we're going to take a look at the video.
What is he on? Whoa!
And since you reviewed the video, you know that before you ran up on them, you were touching your knife in your pocket to make sure it was there, right?
I don't remember that.
All right, well, let's take a look.
What is he on? Whoa!
So you're claiming today that where you reach down and grab at these boys' legs where their tubes are, that was a stumble. Is that your story?
Objection argumentative.
Overruled. You can answer the question.
I know I hit a stone, yes. But I grabbed onto their inner tubes.
And then once you've made contact with two of these boys' legs and grabbed onto their tubes, they started calling you a pedophile, right?
Juwan accused Nick of being a grown man trying to have sex with little girls before he grabbed their tubes. It's in the earlier video, which prosecuting attorney Brian Smestad already made reference to.
I don't remember when they started calling me.
Do you remember them calling you a pedophile at all? Or do you just know that from watching the video?
Correct.
Your attorneys talked about your comfort scale and your fear scale. Let's talk about your anger scale, okay? Mm-hmm. At the time you were called a raper, what was your anger scale at?
Maybe 1.
1 out of 10?
Yeah.
This is bad. Obviously no one is going to be a 1 out of 10 on the anger scale in the face of malicious slander. Nick is falling into the trap of saying what he thinks he's supposed to, which ironically often winds up being the last thing anyone wants to hear. It's unlikely any juror would fault Nick for feeling anger in that moment, but if he gives them cause to believe he'll readily lie about details he thinks might not favor him, that could be very damaging. Smestad understands this and tries tightening the screws further.
Talking about your anger scale, at the point where Maddie Cohen was yelling at you and pointing at you and swearing at you, where was your anger scale?
1.
And Nick takes the bait.
And even with your anger scale being only 1, you started touching, fidgeting with the knife in your pocket, right?
I don't remember that.
So at that point, you're touching your knife before Maddie and Riley are standing in front of you, right?
Appears that way.
Your fear level was rising.
Mm-hmm.
That was the look on your face at the time, correct?
Mm-hmm.
You're smiling.
I'm confused.
You're smiling.
I'm confused.
You're not smiling?
That's not a smile.
Yes, let's move on, please.
You pulled out your knife at this point with these 2 girls standing in front of you, right?
Yes.
You didn't take a step back and brandish it and say, hey, back up, I have a knife, right?
Correct.
And as you're doing that, you're smiling, right?
That's not a smile. I'm overwhelmed.
You held it with the blade facing up, right?
I didn't pay attention, but in the video, yes.
And it becomes important later when you stab AJ, because you didn't try to cut him down, you cut him up, right?
I didn't pay attention.
You see your knife?
Yes.
And how close it is to his jaw, his chin?
Yes.
That's because when you stabbed him, instead of pulling out, you went up, right?
I was falling backwards with the knife in my arm, in my hand, and the angle of my arm was about the same.
At that point, Tony Carlson came in to break up the fight.
I don't know what he was doing.
You know that he told Dante Carlson to back up, right?
Do I know from video and from testimony? Yes. At the time, I didn't know.
Tony Carlson never punched you, correct?
Correct.
And you turned around and you stabbed him twice, right?
I couldn't see, I couldn't hear. I didn't know who was punching me, touching me, shoving me, nothing. I was fearing for my life.
And luckily for him, he was able to block your first stab, so you stabbed him again, right?
I had milliseconds to think.
After you stabbed Tony Carlson, you got up, you turned around, and you sliced Riley Madison through her left side of her body, right?
This is not the chronology. Riley's stab is before Tony's, not after. Also, Nick was standing at the time Tony approached him, no getting up required. It's more than forgivable for the average person to mix up stuff like this, but a lawyer who's been working the case for months should know the sequence of events like the back of his hand.
She wasn't punching you or kicking you.
She came at me, she had her hands on me.
At the time you stabbed her, she had her hands on you.
Yes.
This 115-pound woman attacked you while you're standing there holding a knife.
She could have been 500 pounds.
Something that puts Nick a bit on the back foot in all of this is being a fluent but not native English speaker. It's an infamously difficult language to master if not born into. She could have been 500 pound is obviously supposed to mean something to the effect of, her weight and size are irrelevant, I was reacting to what she was doing in the context of the situation I was in. Jurors by and large can be trusted to understand as much, but an explanation worded clumsily still carries more of a risk of feeling inadequate.
I don't know, I'm sorry, sir, but
You've never told anyone ever that Riley Madison attacked you and that's why you stabbed her, right?
Though he doesn't mention stabbing Riley in his interrogation, he does seem to claim she hit him, as was mentioned earlier. A refresh.
They came after me, they pushed me, one of them hit me, and then there was a girl that came from here and hit me in the back of my head.
Unfortunately, Nick doesn't seem to be well versed enough in his own case materials to volley back on this, and his lawyers don't come to the rescue either.
No.
You're saying it today for the first time.
I don't remember this whole thing.
After you stabbed Riley Madison, Isaac Schumann tries to push you, right?
And he lands his hands on my throat, yes.
Yeah. But his hands originally weren't anywhere near your throat. They were on your shoulder and your chest, right?
I didn't take measurements, but yeah, from the picture, yes.
And as soon as he touches you, you stab up into his heart with your knife, right?
He went for my throat, and I defended myself, yes.
Said earlier that you had waved for your friends to come over because you were so scared. And in fact, Ariel came over, right?
Yes.
And he's in the group at the point that Riley Madison's standing there bleeding into the river, right? He's standing right behind her.
Yep.
And when you stabbed Isaac Schumann, he's also standing there, right?
I didn't see him there at the time, but yes, in the video, yes.
So this narrative about it being 13 on 1, you had a friend there.
In the video. I don't remember him being there.
The last person you stabbed was Dante Carlson, right?
Yes.
He wasn't punching you at that point.
I was surrounded. People were coming at me. I just came up a couple of times, being punched in the head, punched in the mouth. I fell on river rocks. I was in pain. I was hurting.
At the point that you stabbed Dante Carlson, he was not fighting with you, right?
Correct.
He had not punched you immediately before you decided to stab him.
Correct.
In fact, you took a couple steps toward him to stab him, didn't you?
I thought he was attacking me.
You had 4 hours to come up with a story about what happened on the river before you were interviewed by Lieutenant Hart, right?
No.
You didn't have that time.
I didn't put a story together.
Okay. So when you told her things like, 2 of these boys pulled knives on me, you're telling the truth?
No.
That was a story, right?
Correct.
And when you said that you somehow managed to grab one of the boys' arms and bend their wrist back and stab them with their own knife, that's a story you made up, right?
I told her what I remembered.
You remember doing that?
No, everything I told her is what I remembered at that time.
Nick's cross is just going from bad to worse. And to be blunt, he's not even up against that good of a lawyer. I was mistaken and I lied because I was afraid and shell-shocked are both serviceable explanations, but he needs to pick a lane. Going back and forth between the two with little rhyme or reason makes him come across as coached, i.e. it looks like he's been through these points with his lawyers, but he's losing track of what explanations are supposed to go in which places.
At the time you told her these things, you thought that you would grab someone's arm and stab them with their own knife?
As you can see, I was very confused.
Did you not testify earlier that you lied about the knife?
That I did.
And then nobody else had a knife on the river except for you?
That I lied about the knife.
So it's impossible then for you to have twisted someone's arm and stabbed them with their own knife, right?
I saw the video.
No, I'm asking what you said to Lieutenant Hart.
I don't remember the interview, but I saw the video. And
you're aware.
And I know that it's not right. It's not true.
We're showing you what's been marked as Exhibit 4, I guess item 10. That's your knife, right?
Yes.
That's the knife you used to stab these people.
That's the knife I used to defend myself with. Yes.
A nice firm answer there, so it wasn't all bad. And the defense got some redirect in to try and clean up a bit of the mess that was left behind.
You were asked some questions about what happened with each of these people, right? And you were shown some stills.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know how many frames are in per second of these videos?
I learned they're like 24, 25.
So one frame is a 24th of a second, is that right?
Correct.
As you sit here now, are you able to break down exactly what happened in each of those 284 frames? I mean, do you have a memory of
No.
1/24th of a second?
No, absolutely not.
How, as far as time goes, if you can, and I apologize, but if you can, just put yourself back in that space for a moment. Did you seem like you had 284 different chances to do different things and feel different things?
No.
How did time feel in that moment?
Everything was not real. Time wasn't following the same rules.
When you
slow, very slow.
Wrong word, and something that would be very easy for a prosecutor to seize upon and recross.
You said the time slowed down for you.
Told ya.
You said the rules didn't apply, time slowed down.
To me, at that time, everything felt different.
If time had slowed down, you would have time to consider your actions, right?
If it did slow down, yes. So I was wrong when I said it slowed down, but yes.
But that's what you said, right?
I understand.
Oh well, he handled the slip-up adequately enough to not dig himself a much deeper hole. And with the conclusion of Nick's testimony, the only thing left before handing the matter over to the jury was closings.
I'm not going to defend the actions of the boys who testified. It was cruel what they were calling Nicolae. They shouldn't have been mocking him, calling him predator, raper. Clearly, he wasn't looking for little girls. But the boys are not completely unreasonable in their belief. They reacted wrong, but they just didn't invent this whole thing in order to humiliate Nicolae.
No, they pretty much invented that. Every one of them who speaks to the police provides a statement about what happened. Zero mention to the police that he said he was looking for little girls. Why did they say that? I would submit to you that what kind of person does what these kids did to him, and what would they look like as people if all they did was pick a guy out and start to torment him? What do we think of people who call grown men rapers and pedophiles and predators for kicks? They had to come in and say that. Because if they don't, we know what we think of them.
But their conduct did not justify what Nicolae did. Nicolae's clearly not afraid of the boys. He ran up on the boys, turns his back on them and others multiple times. You don't turn your back on somebody if you're afraid of them, especially if you're so afraid you gotta reach for your knife. He was angry, not afraid. So let's talk about the punch to Madison. I submit to you the evidence shows clearly, beyond a reasonable doubt, Nicolae punched her. She fell backwards, but caught herself. Look at her position next to Riley. They're shoulder to shoulder in front of Nicolae before the camera pans away. When the camera pans back, now Dante's shoulder to shoulder with Riley, and Maddie is back. She clearly got knocked backwards.
He talks about her falling back and people seeing things. Okay, people can be wrong. How about things that make sense, though? We know that she's wearing sunglasses, right? We know that. Her sunglasses are not broken. She doesn't have a mark on her face from being cut by sunglasses. Is that what would happen if a 250-pound man squared up on a woman and threw a hook to her face? She doesn't have swelling on her face. Does it make more sense that Nick Miu pushes her out of his space? If he makes this motion, she's not going to have broken sunglasses. She's not going to have a mark on her face. She's not going to have redness, puffiness, swelling, a bruise. She's not going to drop her drink because he doesn't hit her.
Defense has a double standard about that too. If there's not a photo of it, it didn't happen. We know Nicolae got punched. He didn't have any injury. Defense can't have it both ways.
He wanted her to get out of his personal space. The bully in the room doesn't get to yell at you and tell you to leave, and then when you don't leave, doesn't get to get in your personal space because you're not leaving. That's not how this works.
You hear Dante yell, you can't hit a woman before Riley is stabbed. They obviously didn't plan this lie in the chaos of the moment, so the only thing defense can argue is they're mistaken. That all of these people standing around They all were wrong in what they saw.
But what we know from that video is a 250-pound man, 250-pound man, has been knocked clean off his feet backwards into the water by getting punched in the jaw. That's what we know. We know that in 1 second, Dante Carlson, who throws that punch, runs around to the other side of Nick Miu while he's still in his butt, kind of on his lower back, and he cracks him across the face. We know that. That's not in dispute. We know that A.J. Martin, who says he's the peacekeeper, that's what he said, he runs up from behind and shoves Nick Miu while Dante Carlson comes in for thirds. I would submit to you at this point, it's coming from all sides and from multiple people. And this man, who had heart surgery, is terrified as to what's going on.
Nicolae gets punched. He gets struck with an open hand twice. He gets ineffectually pushed by AJ. It doesn't do anything. Nicolae pops right up and disembowels AJ. For the intent to kill, AJ is beyond clear. He would have died but for the blood in the helicopter. He would have died but not for the surgery Dr. Meyer performed. He is lucky, extremely lucky to be alive. What else was Nicolae's intent but to kill when he slices him up like that? He had the knife blade up. That wasn't an accident. He did not know. The first thing he does with it is slice up AJ's stomach.
After he's been punched, slapped, pushed, slapped, he hasn't stabbed anyone. If you listened closely to what A.J. Martin said in his testimony, when he was shown the picture of him making contact with Mr. Miu before Mr. Miu stabbed him, he said, he got me before I got him, I guess. What does that tell you about what A.J. Martin's intention is?
After Nicolae goes down in the water, nobody approaches him. Nobody goes to kick him, nobody goes to punch him, nobody goes to push him again. With Nicolae down on the ground, Tony walks by Nicolae with his back to Nicolae, yelling, "Get back to Dante." He turns around to tell Nicolae to get away, and Nicolae turns around and stabs him. Nicolae was facing his group with an open path of escape.
Mr. Miu doesn't do a thing to Anthony Carlson as he walks by. Anthony Carlson comes up from behind him, appears to be yelling at him and putting his hands on him. So now Miu has been touched at that point, punched, pushed from behind and slapped. And now Anthony Carlson comes up to him. We know that. And then we know 1 second later, Isaac Schumann comes up to him.
Nicolae never said anything about being choked, never said anything about pain on his neck. Even when specifically asked by the start nurse, never mentions anything. Isaac, I submit to you, he just saw Nicolae stab those two people completely unprovoked. Although he was in the background the whole time, not doing anything, he came to their aid, and he pushes Nicolae. You can clearly see it's a push. He has one hand on the arm, other hand on the chest. It's Nicolae's own action of thrusting the knife into Isaac's heart that moves Isaac's hands. You can even see from the release, it's a push. He's not sitting there left holding his hands out in a choking motion.
You guys get to make the decision on whether or not he's choking him around the neck. You get to make that decision. I'm not telling you what that is. You get to decide if that looks like a choke to you or not.
Even if it was a strangulation, which it clearly isn't, Isaac was justified in using any level of force. He just saw Nicolae stab two people. He killed Isaac Schumann, stabbed him directly in the heart, and then walks up to Dante. Walking up to Dante, stabbing him when he's got clear path to retreat, that destroys any argument that this was self-defense. He was angry. There's no rational reason Nicolae, his group's over here, would walk this way towards the group of people to stab Dante.
If you believe Attorney Anderson, he's alone with Dante Carlson. Why does he stab him one time? He wants to kill him. Why doesn't he slash him up? He wants what he wanted all along, to get away from these people. He's leaving, and Dante Carlson, who has beaten him up, has hit him in the face repeatedly, confronts him again. What does he think? What does Nick Miu believe is about to happen? You don't have to let somebody beat you before you respond. Doesn't that make sense?
I submit to you the state has proven beyond a reasonable doubt this was not justified self-defense, and Nicolae knew it. Imminent threat of death or great bodily harm. He's not in an alley with no way out, with people blocking his exit. He's on an open river, 150 feet wide, people yelling at him to get away.
There is no duty to retreat, period. It says you may consider whether the defendant reasonably believed the amount of force used was necessary to terminate the interference. You may consider whether he had the opportunity to retreat, okay? Now you don't have to, but when it starts, when it matters, is when he's using the force. And when he's doing that, he's surrounded. Where's he gonna go? He doesn't have to go, and there's nowhere to go. That should be the beginning, middle, and end of that evaluation on retreat.
When you talk about reckless conduct, let's say you believe his testimony that he just thought anyone touching him, anyone close to him was attacking him and stabbing him. That's reckless. That's criminally reckless conduct. That's utter disregard for human life. What other clues are there to utter disregard? He just walks away. He doesn't call 911. He just sits on his tube as other people are helping the victims, and he tubes down the river. He knew this was not self-defense. All of his actions, from the minute the stabbings are done, from the second the stabbings are done, he knew it. It's obvious.
Anybody who never touched him, he never touched. They didn't touch him, he didn't touch them. If you believe it's self-defense, he's not guilty. If you believe it's probably self-defense, he's not guilty. If you believe it's possibly self-defense, he's not guilty. Likely is, I don't know, not guilty. If you believe it might not be, not guilty. If you believe it's probably not self-defense, not guilty.
His actions were horrific. They were senseless. The state asked that you find Nicolae Miu guilty of all charges. Thank you.
What we're asking that you do is that you send Nick Miu home. That you find him not guilty on all of the charges. Thank you.
In the end, however, the jury did not decide to send Nick Miu home. They found him guilty of the battery charge relating to Madison Cohen, which did not bode well for his chances of acquittal on the more severe charges. For the killing of Isaac Sherman, they found him guilty of first-degree reckless homicide, meaning they did not find intent to kill, but also did not feel his actions were covered by the self-defense privilege, that he showed reckless disregard for human life and that he was aware of that risk and the unreasonableness of his actions. First-degree reckless homicide was the third most and second least severe option, barring acquittal, that they had on the table for the killing of Isaac. But that should come as cold comfort to Nick, as this conviction alone could still carry a penalty harsh enough to put him behind bars for life. For the stabbings of AJ, Riley, Tony, and Dante, the jury convicted Nick Miu of first-degree recklessly endangering safety. This was also the third most and second least severe option they had for each instance. And again their findings seemed to mirror their final assessment of Isaac's stabbing. No intent to kill, but still showed utter disregard for human life. Nick Miu's sentencing date is set for July 31st. All told, he faces up to 97 years in prison. The judge will of course have discretion on that, but it probably goes without saying it's very unlikely he'll extend an amount of discretion that brings that 97 years down to anything like a slap on the wrist. Less than half of it would still be a life sentence. And what should you make of that? Well, what indeed? The whole thing is just a terrible mess and a goddamn shame. Beyond that, there isn't really a one-size-fits-all takeaway to prescribe without going back and relitigating the entire video. Because the Apple River stabbing wasn't an event, it was multiple events strung together where your opinion on what happened at 1 second could vary wildly from another second. One thing that's for sure is that it never should have happened in the first place. So in terms of succinct closing lessons that hopefully everyone can agree on, let's just go with: don't go starting bullshit, choose your battles, and try to enjoy every summer as if it might be your last.